Hello and welcome back to the stream. So I managed I did a little bit of work off screen to this to the world generation. I managed to get the boundary generation working, so that took a bit of sort of careful thinking and sort of playing around, trial and error, which is why I wanted to do it off stream. And I managed to get it in the end, and as usual I was overthinking things, and I just needed to do simple neighbor checks on the blocks to check if a neighbor around it, so if it doesn't have a block around it, it's thin air, therefore put a boundary there. So I've got here a function for generating a world boundary. So what it does is it will go through obviously all the blocks. It will check their boundaries, which basically just does a neighbor check here. So this is the actual neighbor checking code, and then you can see so if it's null, so if it has no block there, then it calls a function called generate boundary, which it does a check to make sure it has, because the boundaries are all separate game objects in their own like empty object, just so it's easy to see in the scene and just keep it organized. So it'll check to make sure we actually have a container to put them in, and then it will then do another check to make sure that it's not going outside of basically to make sure that it's not going to just regenerate a boundary that's already there for optimizations, which is what this does, but also is it stops it going outside of the world here at 0, because we're manually generating them from -1 to get the bottom part of the world covered in boundaries around the edge. So that was a fix I did for that. So that's what we've got there, and it does there as well, and it stores an array of all the boundaries. Now I have also thought about a way we could do this. If I bring up my notes, we could have, because it's something we're going to need to build anyway, we could possibly have an air block type, which is the same thing as the boundary, but rather than keep them in a separate array, we just set that block to be air, which may be better, and then we have it always generate boundaries around the whole world, even if the world isn't generated there yet. So the beauty of this system, if I show you, is it will actually generate. So I zoom out here, if I press escape, I've added a little script to toggle that full screen is on, because you can't do that by default, which is a bit silly, but there we go. So if I get up the actual boundaries here, you can see it's now put squares or cubes, box gliders all the way around the world, which, because we're using a rigid body, as you can see, stops us from going against the edge of the world. Now if you do hold it down, it does this weird twitching thing, and you can sometimes glitch through them, so that's something we're going to need to look at in the future. We may end up going back to our translate code and just doing a stop. We can probably do that on rigid body as well. I also got rotation working properly, so it goes the right direction. I don't know if you've seen that from last time or not, maybe actually. But yeah, so that's all now working, and it does the proper diagonal movements, and I've changed the orientation of the character just to be head on that way, because I think that makes more sense. But yeah, if I generate more chunks of the world, you can see that our boundary code works, and you can see roughly the full square of the world here. If I keep generating some blocks, if I zoom out and keep generating blocks, it does look pretty cool. And then come back out into a scene view, you can see there on the edge of the world it's got the boundaries as well. So, and all the gaps have got boundaries in, so if I try and walk along this gap, it's fine, but I can't walk into this gap or this gap here. I can only walk along the actual blocks, which is pretty cool. So we've got that working. So now what I want to do this stream is, so I've added a bit more things onto the to-do list. So they want to implement the click to unlock world chunks is what we need to do next, and then tweak it to spawn chunks, which we've already got. We just need to actually implement it with this click thing. The block swap system, because if there's a piece of ground that spawns that's just grass and you want to change it into a piece of dirt, we're going to need the ability to do that. And then we got our structure system we were talking about before. Fixed camera rotation, jump room, rotating back to default, end of full circle. I think I've fix that. So yeah, I've also done camera rotation. So now we've got proper rotation around. So what was that? Oh yeah, it's so you can see when it gets to doing the full rotation, is it kind of does a quick little jump. See here, which is a bit weird, so I'm going to need to figure that out. But you can see we've got rotation with some like little smooth animation and damping there, which is pretty cool. So we can do that on Q and E to rotate the camera around the player, which is pretty cool. And there's a lighting issue as well, so for some reason you see how here we've got this light that's always continually there, so I just need to play around with that. But yeah, so let's go ahead and start work on. Also, there's a, see how it's got some weird slidiness to it. What's going on there? Weird. Okay. But anyway, let's have a look on implementing to click to unlock world chunks. So now we've got the neighbor code working. What we can do is we can implement that on our preview chunks here. We can basically just do a simple neighbor check again. So if we have air around it, then we can generate the chunks there. So yeah, let's do I guess we're probably going to want to do the same thing here, aren't we? So we're going to want to keep this, take this loop, and rather than check boundaries, we'll just put our code in here. So if it's a null block, continue. Otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to take this code here and we'll copy this. So this is doing all our coordinates here, and then we don't want to do that because that's the size of the world. And then generate boundaries. So this is where we want to preview. So this is where we want to instantiate our game object chunk thing. So here we're going to be chunk preview, I guess, and then we're going to want an int x, int y. There we go. So then we can just change these to chunk preview. There we go. And of course, naturally, what we're going to want to do is, let me just mute WhatsApp notifications. There we go. We don't need that. Sorry about that. So, so we got Z. I've also changed the rendering, so when it does the loops, the generation, it does it X and Z because it just makes more sense when I'm reading it. So same with the array, it's now done XZ. It just makes things easier. So now we've got that, we want to take our LC chunk preview thing and generate it at that. Now our positions from center, isn't it? So it's always going to be based on the center. So to begin with, let's just get our chunks instantiate and then we can work out position afterwards. So let's just do a game object object chunk preview equals instantiate, and then we're going to do chunk, what was it, chunk preview prefab, yep. And then we're going to do new vector 3, and we're going to do x 0 z, and then rotation should be identity. We don't want any rotation. I guess we can just leave it as that for now, because the scale as well, we want it to scale based on the chunk size. If we just do that and then press what is it, Y, there we go. So now you can see we've got a little preview all the way around the world for the chunks we can unlock. Now we want to do that to the size, so we need to do chunk preview dot local scale preview dot transform dot local scale is equal to new vector 3. So this is where we want to do chunk width, chunk width 1, and then chunk height, and now we should get the 2 by 2. Yes, now obviously that's not what we want position wise, and actually what we're going to want to do is, because we're unlocking chunks 1 by 1, we actually don't want to spawn as many, do we? We want x plus it's actually going to be half of it, isn't it? So actually what it's going to be is it's going to be, you would be doing that max width divided by chunk width divided by chunk height, and then it's going to be that's fine. And then we should get half as many preview spawn. Right, because we're only looping through half of it, but in this case, because we're in that's still going to work, because these aren't 50, are they? So what we actually need to do is need to do x plus equal chunk width, and then z plus equal chunk height. Okay, now that's only 2 around there, which is interesting. What if we take this off? Again, I probably just need to think about this, but I'm just playing around to see what we've got here. Yeah. So, the other option, I mean, no, because we do want to preview the whole size rather than just it being 1 by 1. Then we click it, and then suddenly you've got 2. So, because it's plus equal to, so x is 0. So then x plus equals that. So then you're gonna have 2, and then you're gonna have 4, 6, 8, 12, blah 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 blah. Oops, wrong one. It's not quite what I wanted to do. Although that does have 4 around it, which is actually what we want there, but it's not what we want here. And if we go into our scene view, actually, what in fact, let's just redo that. Then go Y. Then if we go back into our scene view and have a look. So what position is that? Oops. 31 by 26. So 31.26. Well, it's going to be 30.25, isn't it? It's supposed to be for this, I think. What we can do as well is we can also do chunk preview dot name equals preview and then x y whoops oh z even like that. Bear me 1 second. Hello, sorry about that, just had a phone call there to deal with. So where was we? We was here, we was doing our name. Why do I keep doing commas there? It's in the string, right? Now let's have a look at what this is actually supposed to be. 31.26. I mean, okay, yeah, that is. So what if we, I tell you what, why don't we just stick with plus plus for now, and what we can do is let's get it spawning in the right position first, because we're going to want we're going to want to offset the position. So actually what it needs to be is x, well, it should be z minus 1, shouldn't it? See what that looks like. Oops, oh, I keep pressing the wrong key. That's correct for these ones, but not for that one. Because then it's all going to be offset there. Well, I tell you what, to make things easier actually, let's put that back to Z. Let's keep the scale at 1, but let's try and get this alternating working properly. Because that's now 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, which is fine, what we want. But we want basically a gap in between every one now. That's what we want to try and do. So let's see if we can get that working properly. If we go back, let's just do chunk width on here for the moment and see what difference this makes. You see, that's too far along. We actually want it start it at -1. Oh no, because then you're going to run into, you can't have -1 with the blocks, can you? Plus equals chunk equals that. Also, we don't have them on that side, which is interesting. On this side, I should say. So we've got a gap of 1, but it's on the wrong. bit. Now if we add the chunk height back into here, do we get a gaps? Bring up, right, so now we've just got these two sides. We've got the gap in the middle like we want. They're still in the wrong place, but we've only got it on the two sides now. We still want it to have it on all sides. So perhaps that isn't the best way of changing it there. We should probably do some check internally in the loops, I think. That's probably what we want to do. So you have that spawns the way around the edge, but now we need to just have a gap in the middle, because the block is now continues. Otherwise, that's all fine. Then I guess we can here. That's when we can do x plus plus, y plus plus. I guess z. We can manually change them. Let's just do the 1 for the moment. I realise I left that game running. It's not what we want. Right, let's just do the X for the minute and see if that does it. Because if we've generated it, then we skip one ahead. Okay, that hasn't worked. That's now given us the two corners, which is interesting. Because our X is of course our X is the same that way, isn't it? Yeah. And then so our X is definitely this way, yep, which matches up with the X here Unity, yep. So that's definitely cool. But why is it only appearing once? That's really odd. 25, 24, 30, 31. Oh, is it because... No. Generating the chunk previews there is fine. Is it the number of loops we're doing? I don't think so, but let's just take this off for the minute to see if that brings back. I mean, because it still wouldn't be the right amount. No, so it's definitely not. We're hitting the limit. No, I didn't think it would be. So why would plus plus? Because we're only plus equals in 1 every time. Because the continue we're running here. So if we're continuing here, that's continuing this loop, isn't it? Which means we're carrying on for the X. Which is fine. Yeah, because it's null, we just want... Yeah, that makes perfect sense, yeah, because we're going up, 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 null, continue, up, up, null, and then next one, continue. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. But why would changing X... Let's do the opposite. Let's do Z and see what that does. Do we then get the sides only? Yes, and then we've got a weird thing here. Maybe Z plus is what we want though, because okay. Well, why don't we for now let's get it working with the 1x1. So we got the scale disabled yet. That's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Let's get it working with the 1x1. And then we want to click and we can generate blocks. So let's get that working. And why is the preview like not matching up height wise? What's going on there? Ah, I know why, because I've done the same thing I did before on the prefab. It needs to have the thing moved up by 0.25125. Apply, delete that. There we go. So now I need to mouse over each one. So let's do Unity mouse over game object. Oh, it's just as simple as on mouse over. Okay. So then what we need to do is get our prefab here, and then we need a script. Actually no, we had chunk unlocked, didn't we? I think we already did that, didn't we? Yeah. We prepared for that. So chunk unlock, this is what we want. And then in here we want to do, well, we're going to need public int x, public int z, which sets that. And then what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to do on mouse over, and then void on mouse exit. I don't need those there, right? So then we're going to want to do get component, I guess, in children, and then do mesh renderer. Renderer dot color, oh well, dot material dot color dot alpha equals 1. Can we set that? No, we can't. So what we need to do is we need to first do color C equals that, and then we just do C dot A equals 1, and then we can set that equal to C, and we'll do the same thing here. Dot day equals 0.5, and then C there. So hopefully now we should be able to colon card is marked as triggers, and only if physics hit query hit triggers is 2. It can be a coroutine and usual statement. This event is sent to all scripts attached to the collider. So yeah, we want a trigger, don't we? We want that prefab here. Set that to its trigger. Apply. What if we did color dot red, and then as it moves away we do color dot, I don't know, blue, just so it makes it really obvious. Because it needs to be on this layer. It needs to be on the graphic itself. Or we move the box collider to there. So I think we move the box collider, so we do copy and then we move the into here, which means we can get rid of that one there. Then apply. There we go. That's actually pretty cool. We can't get to those ones, which is interesting, but we have now got the ability to select them right here. Okay, we can only seem to do the sides, which is interesting. It's a start. So now here we can just do C, and then we'll do 0.5. Yeah. I mean, maybe we want to do a slightly different color. Let's do, well, first of all, let's do our mesh renderer. Renderer. And then void start. And then we can do renderer equals get component in children. Mesh renderer. Yep, and then we do color, and then we can do color is equal to renderer dot material dot color, and then in here we can just do renderer dot material dot color is equal to, bear me 1 second. Hello, back again. So yeah, mouse over and then color dot what colors have we got? Grey, green, magenta, red, yellow. Let's just do red for now, why not? And then we can do renderer dot material dot material color is equal to color. There we go. Cool. And now when we click, so basically on mouse down, This is when we need to spawn in our new block using XY, but how do we tell it to generate block? Because that's in this class here, so we're going to need some kind of reference to spawn this in. We could maybe make this public static, but then you're going to need that to be your static as well. Unless we make one. I don't think this is going to work either. Doid, I know. Yeah, that's not going to let us access it. Maybe. 0, 1, 2. Yeah, that's not static, is it? So, unless we do a reference to its instance, I suppose, we could do that. That might be the way to do it, actually. We have a public static farm instance. That is right, isn't it? Yeah. Instance, there we go. I knew that wasn't quite right. And then in here we can just say instance is equal to this. And now in theory we can do farm.instance.generate. This is where we want it to be public. Public void. And then dot generate block. Generate block. And we're going to set it to grass by default, and then that'll be in our X and Z. There. And then we can destroy this. Or actually we might have to do game object, but let's see. Okay, interesting. Did it do anything? Because we didn't set an XY, did we? But did it still generate anything? Yes, it did. Okay, cool. So then we want to destroy, rather than destroying that, we want to destroy itself. I mean, actually, if we called it without it, does it do it? Oh, it does. Okay. Oh no, it doesn't. I was going to say. On the game object. Okay, we do have to do game object. Okay, that's fine. So game object. Cool. And we're not setting the X, so what we actually need to do is then we need to do our, where's our preview chunks? Is we actually do here, and then we do chunk well, let's do chunk unlock unlock, I know, equals chunk preview dot get component chunk unlock, and then we do unlock dot x equals x, and then unlock dot z equals z. Okay, so we have the thing destroyed, but we're not spawning the blocks in the right place. Ah, it's spawning it off one. That's interesting. But then how comes... Well, actually saying that, we don't need... Well, I say we could use the XY of chunk preview, but I mean, we've got that already there. We're using the same things. We're instantiating the preview in the right place. So why is it not spawning the block in the right place? Let's have a look again. Boop. 25, 24. Yep. So when we go in and we click that, whoop, we should get 25, 24, but we're not. We're getting 25, 25. Oh, because I'm setting the same idiot. Yay, and now look. Boop. Oh, of course we can keep doing the same things. We don't want because yeah, then we want to destroy all the other things, don't we? That's where we need to then have a preview, don't we? Or well, I guess we could store them in it, or we could just tag them. Let's just create an empty object for now. We can change this later. Chunk previews. Get rid of that. We don't need that in there. And then we go back to farm. And then we can just do don't need that anymore. Public game object. Or transform. And that's going to be chunk preview container, chunk preview container. Don't need the bounds anymore. There we go. And don't need that either. Public void hide chunk previews. And then we're just going to do can we do like children in here? Well, get child. Because we need to loop through anyway, but it's only going to then loop through in there rather than the whole thing. Yeah, that's gonna be better. Hide chunk preview, so then we basically just go 4 each, and then transform. Well, game object preview in chunk previews container. Then we just do destroy preview, and then obviously in here we want to do that, and we want to do chunk preview dot set or dot transform dot set parent, and then that's going to be chunk previews container. So remember to set this. We want to do some null checking, really, but there we go. And then in here, before we destroy, we want to do a callback to farm.instance dot just dot hide chunk previews. There we go. Now, I was thinking we could call it in generate block, but boop. 242. Yeah. Well, I suppose if we do transform, then we can do dot game object. Well, oh no, that does work. Ah, look, there we go, and now we can start to build kind of a world out. Boop. There we go. So now we can start building out our farm a bit more. And we should be able to walk on this. We can't. Interesting. So our boundaries themselves haven't actually updated, which is interesting. Because we're generating a block, then we're rendering a block. Because we're not... That should work though, because when we're generating a block, unless... Check boundaries X, Y. So yeah, what we're actually doing is we want to do that on generating a block, as well as rendering the block. We want to render it, and then we want to check the boundaries there when we generate the block, which actually means in theory, I guess we don't need to worry about. Check boundaries. We don't need to worry about doing generate world boundaries, do we? No, we don't need that anymore. So we should still have our boundaries there. We do, although not quite right. Okay, that's weird. So I'm generating a block, and then we're checking the boundaries of X, Y. We want to make use of generate chunk as well rather than generate block, but we can do that. Later. Let's figure out what's going on here. So check boundaries of X and Y. Well, I guess actually what we could do is let's undo our generate world boundaries. We still want that there, but instead of putting it generate block here, what we actually want to do is we want to go through and we generate a block and we generate our boundaries when we do this. Z, CZ. For now, I'm just going to comment this out. And just set it back to this. This is what we want public. We don't want generate block to be public anymore. And then in here, we actually want to go generate chunk is what we want to do. Takes 3 arguments. Oh yeah. And that should give our boundaries, make our boundaries correct, right? So we should still have all our boundaries there, yep. And then we click this, we generate that, which gives us a random block. But we don't have the proper boundary still. What's... okay. Generate chunk. Let's just keep it to 0 for now. And we want to check boundaries of that. Which is what we were doing here. Were we not? Yeah. So why does it not work properly when we've got this? At least let's generate all the blocks, which is pretty cool. It's not done it there either. Okay, something's not right. I don't understand why that isn't working though. It works perfectly fine when we're generating manually here, and we're calling the exact same code, and now it's not working. Which is very interesting. Because you're checking our boundaries, if it's not null return. See, what I don't understand though is we run it when we press G, that code runs and it runs perfectly. So then why is it when we do it from generate chunk that it's not doing what it's supposed to? Because we're destroying boundaries here, which is not what we want. This needs to go in the check boundaries code. And now if we do it, we can walk along there. We start building up a little world. This is where our rotate camera actually comes in quite handy. Let's just, yeah, build some bits up here. Oops. There we go. Now our boundaries have been generated correctly. There we go. So now we can walk around. Boo, 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 boo. We can extend our farm. Just check up here. Yay! So now we can unlock stuff and we can build more of our farm. And what I do want to do is put a toggle in here as well. So private ball that says basically chunk preview mode is equal to false. When we press Y, then we basically want to do a check here that just says if not chunk preview mode, then do that. Anything else, then hide chunk previews. Cool. So now we should be able to toggle this on and off. Oh, okay. Because we're not setting it. Preview chunks. Chunk preview mode is equal to true. And chunk preview mode is equal to false. Let's put that at the bottom, shall we? There we go. Boop, doot, doot, doot. So why is that getting in the way? That's another thing to fix. So now we can extend our farm like that. Now we just need to get the actual chunks working. Oh, neat morning, Chief. Hi, Bandit. How you doing? Yeah, if you couldn't see, I'll just show you again. But now we've just worked on it, so now... oops, that's a bit glitchy. Yeah, there's still a glitch with the boundaries, but we can't go outside the world. And now, if we press Y, it lets us see parts of the world we can unlock, and then we can click on it to unlock a new block. And we will have, it will be a 2x2, which will be chunks instead, but I was just testing it with 1x1 to get that working first. And our next stage is to get it working with 2x2. So that would happen obviously in the game once you've got a certain amount of money, resources, you know, whichever one we decide to do. That would then give the ability to unlock new parts of the world to build your own, you know, expand your farm. So now we've got that working, we need to get it working with 2x2 because that's what we were struggling with before. And if you bear me 1 second, I'm just going to quickly open a window because it's getting a little bit warm in here with the sunshine. There we go. So now we need to work out why our 2x2 thing wasn't working properly, because the generate chunks we can do 2x2. If we do where's our generate chunk code? It is, where is it? Here. So let's comment that out. Well, uncomment that, I should say. And that's when we do plus CX plus CZ. plus cx plus cz. Hey, now of course it's overlapping. I mean, what we could do temporarily, I suppose, is we could change our chunk height to just be 1. You know, and just to prove this works, let's change our chunk width to say 5. And now we've got 5 every time. It doesn't work that way, but yeah. And we can walk across this, and it's got all of the collision and stuff there, and we can continue watering our farm like that, and then we can walk over here. Oops, wrong key. Like that. Sure, let's generate some bits to expand off it, why not? And then we can just expand, say, this. There we go. So that works. We want to change this to 2x2, but we want to get the actual 2x2 thing working right. I know why it is. It's because the x we're giving it is not the correct x and y. So now with our preview chunks, chunk preview, if we turn our scale back up to this, you can see when we do 2x2, the chunks positioning is not working right. So we need now to get the code so it can scale to any size chunks. I mean, if we click this, it would work, but it's not because it's not positioned correctly as well. It's not generating the right parts of the world. So that's the next thing to figure out. So the chunk preview is actually going to be -1, but it depends on where we click it, I suppose, doesn't it? We're going to need to know, I suspect, which direction. Yeah, so chunk preview, and then we're going to give it a world direction. So this is where our direction thing that we set up very early on, well, quite a few streams ago, I think, comes into play, which is why I left that in there, because I knew we was going to need this at some point. Because as you can see here, always generate trunk northeast directions. For reference, if I want to use directional generation, yeah. So, which we've kind of got really. But I want to set. Oh yeah, that's going to break now. So X. So this is where I want to set the direction. So in here, what we want to do is blocks Z1. So our X plus Z plus 1. So that is going to be, our X is this way, our Z is that way. So this is up and down. So Z plus 1, that's going to be our north direction. So that's going to be our direction dot north. This will be our south direction. This one's going to be the west, and this one is going to be our east, because we're doing x2 here, which is x minus 1, so we're going that way. So that should work fine. Chunk preview that. And now what we can do is we're going to go vector 3 chunk position is equal to that. We're going to chunk our chunk position into here, and now this is where we need to modify it based on the direction. So let's do a switch direction, and default we can just do nothing for the minute. And if our world direction was, say, north, let's make that our default as well, because we want to treat stuff in a north direction by default. I think, even though this is always going to be filled in, we might as well just set a default on it. So if it's going to be our north direction, well, yeah. That's that. Let's do south, because we can get that one working straight away as well. So if south, which means we've clicked towards the south of the block, we want the position to be minus, we want to minus z by 1, don't we? Well, by however many are half of our chunk size, I guess. Well, our chunk size minus 1, won't it? Yeah. So it's going to be then chunk position dot z is going to be minus, we're going to minus equals that, and it's going to be chunk height minus 1. So let's say we had 3 on the chunk height, it should then be backed by 2, and we can test that. So here we're going to go chunk position dot z, which is plus equal to chunk height minus 1. In the case of it being to the east, we want to have, and then we'll just do our oops. Just set that up ready. So in the case of our east, we're going to want to then do chunk position dot x minus equals chunk width minus 1, and then we're going to want our chunk position x plus equal by chunk width minus 1. And hopefully that will spawn our previews in the correct position. It's still going to be generating the chunks in the right position, but now we do have them in the correct position. We've still got the overlap issue to fix, because there's, you can see here that they're all there's overlapping each other, where it's because even though our chunks are 2 by 2, it's still generating it for every block rather than every other block. So that we need to fix, but at least now we have it in the right position. If we go to our scene view, I mean, it is actually slightly out, which is interesting. That is because, right, I get it. It's because, hello, my cat's appeared from sleeping. It's because it's our position, it's all centered based, isn't it? Like here, for example, because our thing's been scaled, but it's still the center point. Which means, are we better off scaling the graphic itself? I mean, we've still got the center point issue then to fix. But let's see. I mean, let's try it again. Yeah, so our chunks are still down in the wrong position. I mean, this is all over the place, isn't it? Oh, what's going on there? Okay. So now we need to figure out with our scaling, because we're just scaling the actual whole prefab, but our graphics is a child object, which really you want to be scaling that rather than the whole thing. So if we scaled that, which I guess what I could do is I could do dot get child 0 dot local scale, and then try that, see what difference that makes. So now that's 2 by 2 by 1. We have that minus 10. That positioning is still off. Our graphics is scaled up though, and actually what we want to do is we want to keep I mean, this is bad hard code that, but we can get the scale of the prefab in a I suppose what we could actually do. And then dot, oops, we do that. But our positioning code is still off because it's all central based, isn't it? So is there a way? I suppose you can't really change the anchor point, can you, when scaling things? Scale selected objects or available custom editor tools. If we put create a new empty and reset that, and then set our 3D object here. Let's focus in on that. Where is it? There it is. Oh no. There's no anchor point, is there? It's always the center. So we just need to account for that in our code, I think. Let's just double check. Unity scale anchor point. Make the object a child of a parent object. Scale the parent instead. So this is talking about using child objects and variables on here. Game object create empty, create over cube, drag cube and game triangle appears by game object, click cube, move the cube, click game object, change that. Yeah, so you scale that out and do that. Okay. So we are actually better off with what we had before and just scaling the whole thing. Hello. Sunbathing, are we? Enjoying the sun. There we go. Right, just check I've also got something 3D printing, so I'm just double checking it's okay. Yeah, that's fine. delete that, we don't need that. Unless it's because we what if we set the position afterwards? Is because we're scaling after we've set the position. That could be what the issue is. Interesting. That is not. That's could be an issue. Well, that would be an issue. Right. Okay. Cool. So that's still. So it's the same issue, but at least the position is actually set correctly now. But if the scale is so. Let's have a look at what we need to do to the position here. If our scale is now 2 by 2, we can't just do 1 off that. Whoops, 24. We'd have to do 23.5, wouldn't we? So then we'd have to do then the scale divided by 4. Yeah. Chunk width. So then all we do here is we just modify the position again. I mean, we could modify. If we didn't set that, are we still getting the same position? Yes, that's exactly what we want. That's cool. So that's pointless. I did think that was a bit weird doing that. So now what we need to do is go basically chunk position. So this then minus chunk width divided by 4. What are you doing? Hello. Cat's come to join. There he is. Hello. What are you doing? Look, it's you on the camera. Are you watching yourself? Do you want to go out the room? Is that what you want? Yeah? I'll leave the door open now. He's awake. Well, since he's asleep, I kept the door closed, but now he's awake. I'll leave it open a bit so he can get in and out. I am back. I realised for that last little part of the stream, I didn't actually have it on the screen. So, yeah, apologies for that. But I'll show you what I managed to get working. So I managed to get the chunk preview prefab thing Now spawning with the correct size and the position all lines up to the edge of the blocks. We just need to fix the overlapping issue now. And I can rotate around, and as you can see, in that case it actually did generate correctly. But this case it didn't. So actually no, because I actually fixed the positioning as well. Oh no, it wouldn't have fixed there actually. Yeah, so the positioning of the block spawning is still off, which we need to fix. But yeah, so that's what I got working. So now this is where we set our offset. So north, that actually spawned correctly, which was interesting. I won't touch that then, but what we want to do is then X, we need to, well, X is fine, it's Z we need to adjust, so we need to do the Z minus equal to chunk height divided by 2. Well, if we had 3, that's 1.5. Well, chunk height minus 1. That's what I meant to say. There we go. And then what we need to then do is, if it's to the east, we need to do X minus chunk width minus 1. And then if it's to the west, we need to do X plus equals, well, X. Origin Z, I should say, then origin X and origin X here plus equal to chunk width minus 1, and then we're spawning it there. So now we should have it all spawn correctly. Right, yep. Yep, and then here, yep. So let's just restart the game to make it easier. So here we should have it all spawn there, yep, which we do. Well, it should actually be, yeah, this one. Yeah, see, that's not correct. We need to do, if it's to the east, we do need to do origin X and Z minus equal chunk height minus 1, and I suspect we need to do the same here then. So plus equals chunk height minus equals 1. So that one, yep, spawns in the correct position. That one already takes, interesting. Yep, that's correct. That's correct. That one is correct. That one is correct, and then we should also have, that one is not correct. So if it's to the west, we want to do Z plus equals and then, so it is Z minus equals, huh, that makes no sense. Chunk height -1, which is 1. Interesting. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Let's rotate round and make sure everything on all the corners are spawning correctly. Yep. There we go. So now we have our world spawning correctly, and we set our world back to the original camera point, which is there. Excellent. So now we fix the offset where it gets spawned. We just now need to fix the actual excuse me. We just need to fix the actual the previews overlapping. So well, because we're doing it by Z, well, X then Z, so if we're going along, so every X, Z, 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 X, this will be 26, isn't it? Oh no, or 20. So debug.log X, well, let's just do X plus Z, and let's see where that's starting from. It should be 25, I think. It's 30. No, it is starting from 25. Yeah, there you go. 25, 25. And then it's spawning in. So it's going up, checking this, spawning one there, spawning one there, spawning one there. So if you've already spawned one there, well, this should actually be shifted that way, I think, shouldn't it? Where's our chunk preview? So if it's east, that's better. Then that matches up. That's better. And then we want to do plus there. Because we want it, oh no, we want it to spawn from 0, 0 onwards. That's probably going to be too little now. Yeah, that's why that was spawning off like that. So we don't actually need to adjust the Z there either. There we go, perfect. And that one should still function. Yes, it does. Cool. So, because that's our 0 going up, up, up. Cool. And then, maybe, we do want to do that. Aha! There you go. That's now working correctly there. Boop, 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 boop. There we go. Bit weird there, but we can fix those. We can fix that. So that's working correctly. I don't know if we want to do X++ though. Yeah. Because we're hitting one and we're moving the Z up, but now we need to do the same for the X really, don't we? Because we don't want to do X straight away. Because this is looping through everything there. And then we do X++ there maybe. Okay, that kind of works. I mean, it doesn't in terms of we've lost these two up here, but that's positioned correctly. This isn't for some weird reason. We continue. We don't want to increase X all the time though. We only want to increase it if we've hit something though, don't we? So ball found block is equal to false. And then here we do that and we do found block equals to true. Then if found block, we do that, and we do found block is equal to false. Aha, we've now flipped it, but we have got it working now on each side, which is cool, and we can click on a chunk. Boop. Like that. And we can now extend the world out. We need to figure out why it's not doing it on top. It's a bit weird, but there we go. And that will just keep going. Like that, and we can explore around this whole world. Like that. And we've just expanded our farm. So, question is now, how do we fix it only appearing on one side? What is actually going on that's causing this to happen? That's what we need to figure out. And actually, more importantly, if we change the chunk size to say 3 by 3, does it still work? Yes, but well, not quite. That's interesting. What if we had the chunk height of 3 and kept the width at 2? Yeah, something's not right there. Well, let's set it back to 2 for now. And then once we've got it working on all sides, then we can then adjust the scale, because it's clearly our code that's calculating the scale and the positioning that's not quite scaling correctly. But we have these working on this side. But why do we not have them on the other side? 24. So that's 25. That's 24. 25. 24, 27. 24, 29. 27, 24. 29, 24. Why don't we have them on each side? One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It found 9. So it should be spawning 9, but we're only spawning 6. No, it should be spawning 12, really. And let's keep that debug in there, because we may need that. So 25, 25, 25, 27, 25, 29. Yep. 27, 27, 29, 29, 29. That's correct. Because it's never getting to here, is it? That's why, because we're skipping 2, it's never getting to this end block. It's getting to here, but it's never getting to this end block, which means it's never going to spawn this. So we need to rethink this. Unless we check, we keep track in an array of the previews, and then we basically just say if x minus 1, if that exists, then we don't need to spawn it back in. I think that's how we're going to do it. So all we need to basically just say is we don't even need, I mean, we could keep the transforms. Yeah. So then we do private transform. That doesn't need to be public, does it? Same with that, I guess. So pub transform, and then we do chunk previews. And then chunk previews equals new transform. Well, I guess max width, max height. And technically it's divided by 2, but technically it's half, but we'll worry about that for a minute. And then in here, what we need to basically just say is could say if x equals 0, because then it's going to generate it for... Oh no, that's fine. So if x is greater than 0 and x minus 1 and world chunk previews dot x minus 1 z does not equal null, sorry, I was a message I was replying back to. X minus 1, because here we've got Z1, which but if we're setting that new every time, then when we do it, it doesn't matter how many iterations. No, it will still take effect because, yeah. So if it's going 0, but chunk previews x minus 1, which is fine, but z-wise, it's going to need to be the same. Unless we try this. If x is greater than 0, if chunk let me try it for this one first, because it might be a bit easier to see at the bottom there. So if chunk previews x minus 1 z2 equals null, and then chunk previews, and what we also want to do is then go chunk previews x, y equals to chunk preview dot transform okay. That looked like that worked. And if chunk previews x minus 1 z1 equals null, and okay, yeah, that works. And then here we need to say if z is greater than 0, whoops, because now we're keeping track of the last block. I mean, what it would be, well, it would need to scale with the chunk, wouldn't it? So it'd be x minus chunk width height minus that, wouldn't it? Yeah. So it'd be x minus chunk width minus 1 and then here we're going to say if chunk previews dot x 1 and then z minus chunk height minus 1 equals null, and that, and then we can say chunk previews x2 z minus chunk height minus 1 equals null, and let's see what this does. Hey, look at that. We've now got it all the way around. They should all still spawn correctly, which they do. We don't have any overlapping now. We can now expand the farm as much as we want. R, which resets our rotation. There we go. So now let's work on the scale code. So if we then set our chunks to be 3 by 3, we keep it squares just to keep it easy to work with. Press Y. We are getting overlapping again, and too many things are being spawned. There should only be, well, 2 should actually be spawned, but we've got 4 for some reason, and the positioning isn't right. Chunk width -1, which is going to be 2, so x -2. So that's interesting. Well, that doesn't work. I'm not worried about position at the moment. I'm just curious as to why we've got too many previews being spawned. We should only actually have 2 on each side. But why do we have 4? That makes no sense. Because it's 3 by 3. So it should be going back 2. And we're setting our array there. You can't just do .empty, it's a bit of a shame. So they're back to null because it gets recreated when we do the previews again. So that way we're not keeping track of transforms that don't exist anymore. Yeah, there you go. But why have we got 4 spawning on each side? We should only have 2. That's really weird. X1, oh yeah, that makes sense. This, okay. Because we should be going back 3. I don't think it's anything to do with floats this time, because chunk width -1, that's just going to be 2. Like, that shouldn't matter whether it's a float or not. So x -2 equals null, and this block is not that. Let's do this one. Debug.log .name. Interesting. Well, we don't need to necessarily do the name of that. We can just do that, can't we? We can just output that. So our first one is 2324. Do we have a 2324? Twenty-five, 24, 24. Oh, idiot. Wrong window. Y. Go to scene view. This first one, that is 2524, which is 2524. X minus chunk width minus 1. Then we have another one which is 2624. But that shouldn't be happening because we should be having 2424. So that's 2524. This next one is 2624. So we're on the same z-axis, which is fine, but we're one along the x, which is not right. But actually, I suppose if we think about it, actually doing it -1, I think is actually what we may want. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. We've got it. That's fine. No, there should still only be 2 spawning, not 3, because it's a 6 by 6 world. The chunk's 3, so there's 2. So we have got a third one. And they're overlapping again, which is not right. If I hit that, that spawned there. So maybe having -1 is actually fine. That's completely fine. Same with the Z. Oops. Right, so we've got 3 on each side. There should still only be 2, but let's just roll with it for now. Out of curiosity, if we went by 4 by 4 for our chunks, what do we get? Because we should still get 2. We do get 3 still, which is interesting. And again, they aren't... They're off by half. So the scaling isn't working right there. So if we go back to 3.3... Let's get the scaling working right. Because they're overlapping. That should be one along. So it's when we instantiate things. We're still actually saying that we're getting 3 regardless, aren't we? If we put our chunks down to 2 by 2, we get 3 because that works, because 2 times 3 is 6. We're always getting 3 regardless of the number. Like, I could set this chunk size to be 10 by 10, and 1 should be enough to cover the world because it's only 6. But, I mean, that's ridiculous. But we are always getting 3. And when we had 2 by 2, it just so happens to work because that does go into 6. So it has to be... It's got to be this, because this is where we're generating the previews. I change this to x minus 2, just out of curiosity. Let's change the chunk size down. I forgot to change that back. 3 by 3. 2, 3, 4. We are still getting 4. And now we're getting, yep, each of that again. If we do minus 3, what does that give us? Still gives us 3, which is interesting. That gives us 4 again. Because we're checking here, we're checking x minus 1. I mean, the reason why I was doing minus 1, because we're going along the x here, we don't want to spawn another preview for this block because it's covered by the previous preview. So that's what we're trying to do here, is trying to work out if the block gets covered and then don't spawn the preview until we get to one that isn't covered. But it's curious why it's either always spawning 3 or 4. Because x, we're not modifying x anyway, are we? No, so we are reading straight from x that we chuck in. So we are setting chunk previews x there, yeah. I don't get it, because x minus 2 should still be working, shouldn't it? We should just have 2 previews, but we're not. We've got 4. Because if we think about it, if we go to our scene view here, 1 is enough to be, this is 25, yeah, which this block is 25, so it's starting from here. And if a chunk is 3, then, well, we're obviously implemented by Z first, but Z1. So this is saying, so let's try and do this, shall we? So X and Z there. X is greater than 0, which it is because it's 25. So we're saying if chunk previews X minus 2 and Z1 is equal to null, and X and the blocks X and Z1 is equal to null, then we want to generate our preview. Yeah, because this is our neighbor check. Duh. That's why I was just confused there. Yep, so we're checking above the block and below the block. So X minus 2 Z1. So here we are saying X minus 2 Z1. So Z1 is going to be up here. Minus 2, you're going to be 23. And that's going to be null. Yeah, and blocks Z1 is equal to null. Which is this one. Then do a preview. This isn't null though. I might just for the moment disable 3 of the preview axes so we can tell what's going on. So this is just 1. No, that's why, but we're generating south. Yes, exactly, yes. So Z2, sorry, yes. So if that one and that one is null, yep, then generate our preview. And then we come along again, we generating our preview, yeah, because that's that, right, yeah, and then we come along again. Minus 2, we're not generating a preview because that's already got 1. Come along, yeah, so that's actually what's happening. We've got 4 there because it's that first one that's being checked, isn't it? It's that first block that we're minusing 2 from, which is out into the void over here. You know, that's somewhere, that's going to be, you know, there. And then it's checking 1 down, so 24, it's checking this. And because that's null, we are generating our chunk preview. It's getting to the next block, minusing 2, which is in the air again, so it's generating another preview. It gets to the third block along, so 27. Going back to 1, 2. Out here is null, so it's generating another preview. Moving along, 1, 2, coming out here. Interesting. Well, I think for now, I think I'm going to do that off screen like I did with the other thing, because I need to try and figure out exactly what's going on there. Let's set our world container back to, let's set our chunks back to 2 by 2. So that's fine. So it works fine like this. When we scale it up, it doesn't work, but I'm going to do that off stream, I think, and figure out that part, because I need to try and sit down and maybe a bit of paper, try and work out what's going on. Yeah, and then I can sort that out off stream. But for now, we've got that working. So why don't we now figure out what is going on. So actually this we can just delete because we don't need that. We don't need that either. And we can get rid of that ball because we don't need it. So that's all fine now. But now what we need to figure out is why is it not letting us do the tops of these blocks? Is it a layering thing? Do we think E should rotate left or right? I'm a bit kind of... And then we've got it the other way around. I think we need to have E go to the right, which is our camera controller here. We want a direction to be there, -1. We want that to be ++, and go to the right. We want -. There we go. Because I naturally wanted to press E to go to that side. That feels more natural to me. Yeah. And R still goes back. Cool. And it goes back that way. Okay. Well, actually what we want to do is we want to set rotation dirt times by equal -1. And then we reset back, it goes that way, reset back, it goes that way. So that way we're resetting back the same way the opposite way we turned. There we go. So we're not going around in a big circle. Cool. So now we need to figure out why we can't on top. Unless it's a layer, we could be if we project settings, physics. If we create a new layer, we're going to add layer called chunk previews, and then set our prefab here to going to be chunk previews. Yes, change children. They're on a different layer, but can we make that layer like not render in front of everything, but the physics layer appear in everything? Because I think that's what's going on, isn't it? I think. Because if we moved over... No. We can't get those ones in the background. Unity orthographic on mouse over. That's not what I want. Triggers on tiny part of collider. Nothing in front of the one you marked by that you want that is marked as raycast target in the case of UI. Might be good to switch the event system use interfaces. Because it's the raycasting. Cause that's what's going on. Because it's raycast target. It's being blocked. Because we're going through that into this block, I think, is what's happening. But then we should be going into... It's related to the raycast targeting, I think. Now the rigid body's not doing anything. Whether it is trigger or not makes no difference. The other option is we do our own code with the mouse. Which is possible. Maybe that's what we need to do. Raycast hit physics. Well, it's going to be camera dot main dot screen point to ray. Screen to world point. And then here we want new, well, mouse position. Input.mouse position. Sure. Because if we do physics.raycast, ray, so we can do that. Ray equals that. Raycast hit if physics.raycast ray, and then we want max distance, I don't know, 100f, layer mask, ray. Can we not output what gets hit or something? Ah, raycast to info. So and then we do out hit physics ray distance, ray out hit info. Ah, there you go. Then we do hit dot debug dot log hit dot transform dot name. Preview 27, 29, preview 30, preview 31, preview. That is actually working, I think. If hit, then let's just change our renderer to that. Let's just copy that out of mouse over and then see if interesting. Why did that change the whole thing? Maybe the entire time it was just outputting everything. If we go back to this, comment out that and go debug.log hit.transform.name, and we can have a look at our console afterwards. So that do. Ah, no, we do that. That. Boundary. Preview. 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 Boundary. We can tag this. In fact, if we add a tag to the prefab, add a tag, and we're going to call this chunk preview. If hit.transform.tag does not equal, well, equals what did we call it? Chunk preview. Ugh. Then we can output the hit. That's just, oh, 492. Yep. Yep. Still changing everything. Because it's changing the material, not its own instance. That's what's happening. Also, we want a ball that says mouse over equals false. If mouse over return, so then we can say mouse over equals true. Shared material dot color equals color dot red. No, that's still changing everything. It should just be doing its own instance. Because share material is what's doing the other thing, isn't it? First instance material assigned to the renderer, but we just want that specific instance. Material, and then here we can just do material equals renderer dot material. This, I think it's just going to do the exact same thing. Yeah, we want its own material, don't we? Recording all process number material. Ah, okay. Yep. Renderer dot material. Wow. Equals new material. That. Yep. Then renderer that. Why? Chunk preview instance. But why is everything... Why is the whole thing going red if it's a new material? Well, actually, we still want to... mouse over equals true. Well, there we can do our material code, I suppose, but then we want to say if input dot get mouse down 0, then we want to do this. We comment that out for now. We should at least be able to click on any of these. Nope. Why is it going to that one? I mean, that's not going to make a difference, but that will certainly make sure it's only on the previews. Yeah, it's not... okay. So it's the same, so yeah, that raycasting thing doesn't work. But it works, okay. Let's comment out this whole function for now. We don't need to worry about that or even that. let's just keep it how he was before. So at least that's working somewhat. I mean, we still want it to be able to do, you know, these in between, but that's something to do with the raycasting, I think, and the layers. So I'm going to have to look into that. Again, probably off stream because it's not going to be very fun for you guys. Let me just turn on these lights. It's getting a bit dark now. Okay, so implement click to unlock chunks we can do to spawn chunks. Yeah, because we are using generate chunk, aren't we? Yeah, so that's fine. Then we need to fix not all chunks being clickable. So I think that's something to do with raycast layers, something like that. Block swap system, structure system and stuff. So swapping blocks, I think, is probably the next thing we want to have a look at. Okay, let's just call it MR because it's going to complain otherwise. MR. Okay. Make sure it still works. Yep. Okay, so our camera controller is fine. We don't need to access anything there at the moment. Our crop logic we don't need. Edge helper we can get rid of because that was something I was trying earlier with the boundary detection thing. So since we don't need that in our project anymore, we can remove that. So now we want to work on a way of swapping up blocks. So let's say I decide to extend my form out this way. I want to build more dirt here. Then I can just press essentially, well, say F, because that's our action key, and then the block underneath would turn to dirt. So whilst that's easy to do from an array point of view, we need to re-render that block, I guess. So on here we want to create a new function, render block, generate block, spawn player. So let's go void, we want to go change block. So we want to give it a new ID. So that's the int ID. We want the X and Y of our block to change. And then what we need to do is basically we need to say destroy our game object that's responsible. Well, we aren't storing game objects, aren't we? We are storing blocks. But what we could do actually is store a reference to that transform in the block itself. With the prefab, and then we can do public transform and then block transform. That's not how you spell transform. Transform, there you go. So now we need to update. Oh, that's fine. Farm. So when we generate our block here, block equals block, we then do. When we're rendering the block, we then in here, we then basically say block xz dot block transform is equal to go dot transform, because that's once we've instantiated it. So that's now storing a reference to that. So now what we can say is we can say destroy blocks xz dot block transform, and then from there, whoops, I put y instead of z. And then from there, we basically just want to we want to set blocks x z equal to null. Well, I suppose we could do that at first, can't we? And then we just go generate block id x z, and that should just call the whole render function. So then our player controller, we can then just go interactive down action, hydrate, anything else. Then we can just say farm.instance.change block to dirt at hit.transform.position.x, hit.transform.position.z, because our position in the world is the same as what's in the array. Yep, you are completely right. And actually, I realise now that's probably where I went wrong in here. We want all that to be floats. Or say int. Well, no, that's fine. Yeah, because we're ints there, it's fine. No, that is right. That is right. But it's a float there, but we would just want to convert that to the int, yep. Object reference not set. 200. Oh, you twat. We don't actually need to set it to null because we're not actually checking if our thing is null anyway. Ah, there you go, look. And now if it's already dirt, we hydrate it. But now we can extend our farm out and we can change these blocks to dirt, for example. We can expand out some more grass here. We can expand out our farm. We can rotate round and we're going to expand out some more dirt there. Nice. Let's just generate some more world, because why not? That's how you want to convert these to dirt. And sometimes it does plant a crop, which is because we've got it randomly at the moment on dirt. But if it's dirt, it gets highlighted there. So actually, if we wanted to do our whole boundaries as air blocks, that would actually be pretty easy to do using this. It would, on the other hand, I mean, I would say it meant we'd have like 1,000 or 10,000 game objects, but actually it's not the case, because we wouldn't want to generate air for just null blocks. We'd only want to generate air around the actual, you know, blocks on the edge. But we now have a way to swap blocks, which is pretty awesome. Obviously we don't want to just default to dirt, but in the future, once we've got more block types and we've got different tools and things like that, that's what we can work on. But that's pretty cool. Whoa, okay. Yeah, it breaks when that happens. Right, okay. Obviously, they wouldn't actually be like this in the real thing, so that's, yeah. But we have a way to swap blocks. That's pretty awesome. So we have a block swap system in place, because we're generating another block. And actually what we could have as well is we could have public void destroy block, which would be int, well no, it would be int x, int y, or z even, and then in here that's where we would destroy that. So we want to destroy block x, z in there, and then we want to generate block there. And then afterwards we actually want to set blocks x, z equal to null. There we go, still works, perfect. So we can just convert this whole thing to dirt if we wanted to. And then we could expand out and we suddenly got more grass. And we could expand out like this, and then we've got more dirt we can play around with. Yay! Like that. So that's ticked off the list. Build structure, system add start and house structure, proper graphics, lighting issue, rotation jump. Okay, so the starting area would essentially be, I can replicate this with this new system. So the starting area would really be this. And there would be a house here with, I don't know, tools or whatever here. So we need to build that into our generation system, is to actually have a platform there. And then we can work on our structure system, so we can occupy, much like we did with the crops and things, it would occupy that particular block slot placed on top there. But in the case of like the barn house and stuff, we'd want that to go across multiple blocks, so that's what we'd need to actually factor in. Because what it would do is spawn down that size, but then it would set every single one of those block slots to be that particular instance of that. So no matter what block we're over, as long as we're, you know, near there, we could access it. Although actually saying that with the house, we'd want it to be, you know, we'd want to go up to it to interact with it, not over the top. So I think I think that's a good place to leave the stream for today. And I'll try and work on this raycasting issue. And then next time we can come back and work on our structure system, which would be a good place to carry on. That'll be fun. We can start getting some graphics in there as well. And yeah, so that stream will probably be Wednesday, possibly before then. If you join the Discord, you'll get updates of whenever I go live. I'm coming up with a schedule at the moment. So the rough schedule is going to be Wednesdays and weekends, but it could be changed. It could be whatever day I feel like streaming at the moment. I'm just getting adjustment to what works for me and what works for viewers. So thank you to everyone for watching. Stay tuned for the next stream, and yeah, see you next time.